Okay, so this is the one of the last two rear sections. And you see it's kind of complicated. It's got tabs. There's where the rudders are going to go right there. And it's got these little tabs that are just like any other tabs. They're numbered, which is nice. On the rear end section, there's a little eye. That eye goes right back there. See? So I actually folded them together. It's the top one and put it on that's what we've been doing. Now the bottom part is confusing. Is you've got those tiny where I'm pointing. There's tiny little slots. You barely see them cut. That's going to help squash this up against the back or the bottom of the airplane. So this fits on just like any other thing that we've been doing. This one didn't fit quite as well. It's a very complicated shape, and if any kind of discrepancies, but you can see that's how it's going to fit. It's straight, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of work on it. That looks pretty good. I did notice that where it fits up against that next set of tabs, I had to actually add, so I'm trying to point this out. See that darker, get it in the picture, dummy, there. That darker piece that's on the edge towards my fingertips. I'm trying to point it out. That piece, and there's one on the other side. That's just, I had to add that and flare that out a little bit. Otherwise, I left a huge unsightly gap. Now, I'm going to be filling all this stuff anyway, but I had to put those in. Again, I doubt it's the model. I think it's me. But in any event, you add a little glue to the parts that are needed and a little bit there. Now, I edited this out, but I don't put that much glue on, really. I go through with my finger and sort of tap it off a little bit. So then you go ahead like normal. You line up the straight line there, the seam on the bottom, and you just start gluing it in place. And it fits quite well. And again, this is a really complicated shape. It's curving up or it's flat, but it's also got to go around that back side, and then it's got to hook into that top piece that actually fit really well. So this is probably the worst fitting piece yet. But you just take your time, go around. There it is, all together, and looks quite nice. Now what's needed now are a couple of little vents that go on either side under the tail, under the horizontal stabilizers. But you can see it doesn't look too bad. It's not bad at all. So those are the two pieces that are like vents, and you can see they bend. They're going to go right where that little white line is under my finger. There's one little white line and one there, and that just sort of lets you know where they're supposed to go. And there's one on the other side. So I cut them out and I bent them. You can see they're bent so that they'll look right. And that's shown on the plans. You can see we're supposed to bend them at those 90-degree angles on the edges, which makes sense because they are these little vents that stick out. And what I did was I started to put these on, and I noticed they fit fine. I mean, they're the right size and everything's good. The problem is that they didn't fit well against the fuselage. The one piece towards the front. So when you stick these on, everything's fine. But then when I looked at it, so that lines up beautifully. That's perfect. It's straight. It looks good. But the part that's going forward, the tip of my finger's pointing towards, when I push down on it, because it's not the right shape, there's a curve on the fuselage, it didn't really fit. When I looked at it, I realized that if I push real hard, all it does is stove in the rest of the fuselage, and it doesn't really fit. So I can't tell if you can tell here or not, but at one point I realized that there I'm pointing with my little thumbs. I'm trying to push that piece down, but it just won't stay, and it's just going to be pressure and force. So pull it off, and just take a little round object and do what we always do. Put a little curve in. I'm using the fat, fleshy part of my fat little hand. And now it conforms beautifully to the rear fuselage. And glues, no seam, no nothing. So I did the other one the very same way. And now you end up with these two vents that are very prominent on the real airplane. So they're definitely needed. And they look cool. Those little white squares, by the way, are where spars are going to go for the tails. Put the other one on, and there they are, completed. And there's the back end, what it looks like. Not bad. I did fix that other one a little bit. But that's how the landing gear is going to go. I'm just pushing that through a hole to show you the landing gear is going to cant forward. I had to do a fair amount of digging around and cleaning. And there's the floor piece that's going to go inside. That is the part where the landing gear that you're going to see up in the wells. Now, I had to add weight. So these are little pieces of weight that I added to the front. I should have added them before I closed up the front end. I didn't think about it until it was too late, which is sort of the story of my life. But those have to go in there somehow, because otherwise it's going to be a tail sitter. Tricycle landing gear, it's going to fall on its little back side. So all I did was put a little super glue on each of these weights, carefully pick them up, and drop them into the nose area, and then let them use gravity to drop onto that lower shelf, and just put them in one by one. And now it's nice and nose heavy. I got to make sure I make that nose wheel nice and strong, in fact. But now it'll sit the way it's supposed to once I put it on. It's all its main gear. So there it is. You can see I'm holding at the center of gravity, and it tips forward over the wings there. See, it goes flip forward like a boom. So now I know that it's gonna work. It's gonna fit well. It's gonna sit right. Now, got to put this in. I had to cut a bunch off. There's this paper piece that I folded. That's for the interior of the wheel well. I wasn't sure what to do with those white edges, but I figured it out later. That, of course, fits underneath there. And you just glue it down. And that's going to give you some nice strength that you're going to need when you put in that nose strut, that wheel strut, which I'm not sure I'm going to make it quite yet. Anyway, put that on nicely. Squish it down, let it dry. And now you have to form all the folded pieces to make the wheel well. And that's a simple matter because it's already shaped, and I've already folded it and bent it, as you can see. And well, in this case I use super glue just because I had it handy. And I just fold these up, and I end up with a nice little blocked off wheel well for the nose. I had to do a little more trimming, making things flat. I had to use a sander at one point. I think I even show it. You can see I'm taking out chunks of that wood just to make it so that when you put it in, it doesn't quite fit, so you got to play around a little bit. But this is just to show you that you do have to do a little bit of excavating, at least I did, in order to make this work. But, and now I'm just trying to make sure it's kind of straightened out a little bit. Sand just a tiny bit. And some of those ragged edges, we'll deal with those later. Don't worry about that. Now, I tried putting this in from the bottom. It was difficult. So I ended up just putting it in through the cockpit, open cockpit. Then I was able to slide the front end in with ease. Carefully. It snaps right in place, really. And then the back end folds right up like that. Beautiful. And then what I didn't know what to do was with those white edges, these right here. You can see them on the very edge. The sort of the tabs. I wasn't sure what these tabs above that X-Acto blade were for. I was kind of confused. But what I ended up doing, see, there's my confused look on my hand. What I ended up doing was folding those, and they work really well. But there's this whole fuselage together. It looks awesome. So here, I'm sliding this in. I got glue in there. And now I'm sliding it in. And as usual, things don't work perfectly when you put glue on them. But this did work well. It fit just fine. But coming in from the top seemed to be the way to do it. So I'm just making sure everything is folded correctly. And what you can see, or you can't see, is those white tabs. I'm kind of pushing them in. They've been folded over on themselves, and they form a nice attachment with the side of the fuselage, the paper coming down either side. So there I'm squeezing them so that they dry. And there it is, all together, nice and solid. Got a nice solid place to put my cockpit and everything else. Looks good. And then here's just a picture showing. It looks like a Weeble. When I was little, they were Weebles. That's because of the way it rolls all over. Anyway, stay tuned for more excitement.